Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. Always a pleasure and a privilege when we get together on these weekly news updates. And I am so thankful for all of those of you who are sharing these links and getting the word out. And it is very encouraging to all of us who are believers and who are standing together watching these things as they unfold. And it is very encouraging to see so many of you, thousands of you, have sat with us for these weekly news updates. And I do pray that they are helpful to keep you, as we like to say around here, informed without being overwhelmed. And right now, how many know that that is a very important thing, that we need to keep ourselves from being overwhelmed and getting too frantic. This is the time that we need to calm down, think rationally, and let the Ruach of the Most High lead us in every step. And I'm thankful for all of you here on the chat joining us on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Always a pleasure to sit with you. And for those of you that are watching us, maybe for the first time or just as a reminder to everyone, we do have this website. It is remnantwatch.com. And if you go there, you'll find that all the stories that we talk about every week are right here. We have a nice, convenient search bar. So if you do catch a previous broadcast, you'll be able to go back and find those headlines and those stories that we discuss. But of course, we have to keep moving. We don't have any advertising on there. Keeps it nice and simple. And so many people have commented on that, how much they appreciate that, because a lot of times they don't have a lot of time. And maybe they're in between things and they're just quick scrolling. They just quick scroll and they feel like they've caught up without having to get all the way into all of it. You know what I mean? So they're able to just scan headlines and go, okay, I think I'm kind of catching on where everything is, and if there's something of interest, you can click on it and take a little trip over to that article. And on that note, let's get into the news, and just an encouragement to all of you. For those of you that may not know, this week begins the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. And so there are special things going on in the heavens. Keep your eyes open, get your cameras out, begin to record these things. And I pray you are all in a safe place as we gather together to celebrate the feasts of the Most High. And so let's get into the news today as we get into a wrap of a lot of things that are going on right now all over the earth. And tonight's top story is, of course, quite ominous. When you see a headline like this, well, we need to pay attention. And of course, NATO is preparing massive evacuations and rescue plans as senior general warns of World War III with Russia. NATO is mobilizing its resources and strategic plans in anticipation of a potential all-out war, as articulated by Lieutenant General Alexander Solfrank, head of NATO's Logistics Command. This urgent preparation underscores a grim reality. The specter of World War III is looming. In these 2.5 years of war in Ukraine, we see how U.S. and NATO support for Kiev has breached one by one all the Russian so-called red lines. And so now we're seeing an increase of the rhetoric going back and forth with now this foreboding headline that we are headed for conflict with Russia directly, not indirectly through a proxy or indirectly through third-party nations or groups, but instead direct conflict with a world superpower. And if that doesn't concern you, then you're not paying attention, because as you can already see, without war, just natural disasters can wreak horrific devastation on a nation. So you don't need a war to have devastation. We've already seen some of that. And but now here we go. We're going to go ahead and see some of these things coming upon the earth. And we're seeing the U.S. warships. So again, one of the very troubling signs that we've watched for several months now is the slow erosion of fear of the U.S. military, U.S. forces, in and around the world. So there's more and more encroachment. There's more and more um, antagonism that we're watching right now. So here we see a story that U.S. warships come under attack in the Red Sea as nearly 24 incoming missiles and drones are shot down. And this is, again, another, foreboding thing. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants, and we continue to see this in the headline. So this is constantly put there, have attacked numerous commercial and military vessels following the October 7th massacre against Israel, which, again, a lot of questions are being asked, especially those that know a little bit about borders. And, of course, they're asking them more and more. 3 U.S. warships came under attack Friday off the coast of Yemen by Iran-backed Houthi rebels who have disrupted commercial shipping in the region, but no one was hurt, officials said. The warships shot down nearly 24 incoming missiles and drones while transiting a narrow entrance into the Red Sea. This is one of the most dangerous parts of one of the most dangerous naval passages. Has been for some time. It was so back in the early 80s when I was in the Navy, and it doesn't appear to have gotten any better. So this is not a good thing. It is a choke point in a lot of the world's commerce. I think something like 60% of the world's commerce goes through this strait. Some ridiculously high number. I don't know the exact number, but it's a very high number. And so, of course, a choke point there is a choke point on the world economy, a choke point on a lot of things that are going to have their impact. And speaking of impact, many of you know that there was these conflicts are continuing on. We still can't figure out what value a bomb has, but and apparently thousands of Iraqis are asking some of the same questions. And their attempt was to storm the embassy in Baghdad following Hezbollah leaders' targeted killing. So this is now starting to spread and incite the common man. As reported at the Gateway Pundit, Hezbollah terrorist group leader Hassan Nasrallah is now dead. Apparently, this didn't go over so well among Shiite Muslims in Baghdad. According to the Geller report, thousands of Iraqis attempted to storm the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. So, if their goal was to get the common man really riled up for a fight, looks like they're getting their way. On her blog, Pamela Geller said videos show protesters clashing with security forces in riot gear can be seen among the large crowds, along with flags of Iran-backed militias in Iraq known as the Popular Mobilization Force. So they're trying to conflate and basically put Iraq and Iran together, and that way they can just kind of go after them all. So this is getting very, very dicey as we walk. And so this is becoming a very difficult time. And of course, now we're seeing a lot of evacuations. You're seeing that word evacuation a lot. Okay. And that is a serious, serious word when you think about it. It means run. When you hear the word evacuation, evacuation does not mean walk leisurely. It means all hands get out of Dodge. And how many know there are certain parts of the world you need to evacuate? As a matter of fact, that's what's happening now. Germany is evacuating diplomats and families out of Lebanon and out of Israel. So expecting a greater conflict. Iran's moving troops to battle invasion of Lebanon. So this is interesting information considering as we go on in this update. But Germany has begun the evacuation of its diplomats and their families from Israel and Lebanon. Iran has raised black flag of mourning over a shrine of Imam Reza. Israel has let it be known they intend to target Iran's supreme leader, and word is that Iran is readying troops to go into Lebanon in support of Hezbollah. So now, if the intention was to get Iran into the war, and you could see, we've been watching this for almost 2 years now, you could see the resisting. They were resisting it. They did not want to get into this war. They were using diplomatic means. Remember that? They were prosecuting. And I do think there's been some effect to that. However, as those who are, committed to that method of whatever tend to do, They just doubled down. Sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes when people should retreat, they double down. And speaking of doubling down, this is getting interesting, this whole Russian thing. Wow. Have you guys been watching any of this? This is, look at this. This is going to be a little trippy. So Russia has decided, hold on a second. Let me refresh this page and get rid of this pop-up. Russia has decided to send army wolves. I don't know if you knew that they had them, but yes, Russia is sending in the wolves. I'm like, you can't make this up, guys. Russian army sends wolves to the front to help counter threat from Ukrainian drones. Russian soldiers are desperate to protect themselves from Ukrainian drones that are sowing panic among the ranks. Vladimir Putin is turning to wild animals in a desperate bid to try and counter the threat from the Ukrainian drones. And I got to tell you, drone warfare is a new thing. It is something that has just in recent years come on the scene, and it's changing the battlefield. We just heard about drones in the straits, right, and against the ships, and now we're seeing drones that impact on the battlefield. Drones have changed everything, all right, and they're not as expensive. These are not the Predator drones, the $1 million version. These are sort of the cheaper versions, but they can make more of them. You can shoot them like bullets, you know. So this is leveling the playing field just a little bit. Their multi-million-dollar weapons aren't working quite as well. And so as a result, guess what? Well, then we're going to need more people. And this is the way it works, folks. Putin has ordered a conscription of 133,000 new soldiers to fight in the front line. So this just out. Vladimir Putin has ordered the conscription of another 133,000 soldiers. The 18 to 30-year-olds will be called up between tomorrow and December 31st, but parents have raised fear that the untrained conscripts will be thrust straight into hot border regions close to the war zone, and that's a reasonable fear. That's precisely what happened in Vietnam. The figure is higher than the same draft last year when Putin recruited 130,000, and in spring when he drafted another 150,000. If you remember, we covered that and we talked about that. So now this is another conscription on top of the one we mentioned a few months ago. And this is getting dicey. So, that you don't do that unless you plan on that. That's expensive. They got to pay all of those guys. So that becomes a really big deal. And I'm very thankful to see that we're seeing cooler heads in some regards, but hopefully this conflict will be over soon. Unfortunately, everything that it looks like it spills out into a greater conflict. And I know that that's exactly what they want. We certainly don't want to see that. Unfortunately, we may just have to endure it. And speaking of more conflict, I don't know if you guys knew this or not. I didn't know this. I knew that Russia and Ukraine were, going, and I knew that Israel was knocking out Lebanon and had made a parking lot out of Gaza, but I didn't know that at the same time the U.S. is just going ahead and airstriking on Syria, killing 37 militants. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. So 2 U.S. airstrikes in Syria killed 37 militants affiliated with an Islamic State group and an al-Qaeda linked group, the U.S. military said on Sunday. And it said 2 of the dead were senior militants. So this did not make near as much news as I thought it would after I read this story. U.S. Central Command said it struck northwest Syria on Tuesday, targeting a senior militant from the al-Qaeda linked Haras al-Din group and 8 others. They say he was responsible for overseeing military operations. Does anybody see and all out of effort to ignite the Middle East in straight up war? I mean, wow. And so we were warned about this. We knew that Israel was warning the United States that it was going to go into Lebanon, right? And even gave them advance notice. And then guess what happened? Anybody want to guess what happened? Anybody? No? Don't want to guess? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The IDF began ground operations in southern Lebanon. That's right. They're breaching into southern Lebanon, attacks Hezbollah terror targets. The IDF attacks in southern Lebanon targeting Hezbollah targets. Ground forces are supported by Israel's Air Force. So IDF soldiers entered southern Lebanon as part of a ground assault on Monday night, while the conflict with Hezbollah continued to escalate increasingly. Israel's military confirmed the operation during the early hours of Tuesday morning. And yeah, it's a stage, but nevertheless, here we go. And so we have to be paying attention, because even though a lot of this is theatrical, it can affect you. Okay. If you are in this theater of operations or in the ripple of it, meaning you're going to be affected by its ripple effect, then it doesn't matter that it's theatrical. You're going to be impacted. In fact, the Lebanese army is withdrawing from southern border with Israel, sources are saying. So the Lebanese army seems to be distancing itself, interestingly enough, from the Hezbollah people. This is an interesting development. The Lebanese army was seen withdrawing from several positions on the southern border with Israel, local residents and security sources told Reuters. Lebanese security sources said that the troops pulled back to at least 5 kilometers north of the border between Israel and Lebanon. However, an additional source from the Lebanese army refuted this statement. So, of course, they're going to argue with it. Bottom line is, when Israel came into southern Lebanon, they came in almost unopposed. So this is just going to embolden them even more. So this is going to turn into a greater conflict, folks. And that's what we're seeing now in the headlines. And so this is now coming out in full force that the Middle East is on the brink. Israeli tanks mass at the border with Lebanon amid fears of imminent ground invasion as West scrambles to prevent, quote, all-out war. Meanwhile, the West is bombing its own targets, right? So not really trying real hard to prevent all-out war, but, strategically, it's just interesting how they keep saying this. We're not trying to start a war. Wait, we got to bomb this guy. But now we're not trying to start. We're really not, but we got to bomb this guy. Hundreds of Israeli tanks have lined up along the Lebanon border as fear grows over an anticipated ground invasion that could plunge the Middle East into an all-out war. So they keep saying this all-out war. So whenever we see these things, we pay attention. Why? Well, because they tend to telegraph things ahead of time. And so, of course, they're going in with the tanks, and that is a difficult thing for them, for those who are opposing them to deal with. They've got, state-of-the-art tanks and equipment. So the only way that that's going to get stopped is with a counter army. And unfortunately, that's reality. And of course, their reaction, they continue to have these wars of words. Iran's embassy in Lebanon says Israeli strike on Beirut is dangerous, game-changing escalation. Okay. So Iran's embassy in Lebanon said on X that Friday's Israeli strike on Beirut's southern suburbs represents a dangerous, quote, game-changing escalation, except so far we've not really seen the response from Iran that I think these guys expected. I think they expected Iran to come out guns blazing day one, and that just didn't happen. So it's starting to look more and more and more, kind of bullyish here. And I think that was the intention that they were trying to do. They were trying to, remember, guys, it's always a battle of high ground. Always. It's always a battle of trying to get a superior position so that you can claim the other guy is the bad guy. You see it in interpersonal relationships. You see it in business. You see it in everything. People can't handle being wrong, so they have to demonize the other guy so they can get what they think is high ground. And unfortunately, it ain't that. They don't have the high ground. Middle East crisis. Israel launches more strikes on Lebanon as it happened. And so if you notice, they're not spending any time on any issues. They're not spending any time explaining themselves. They are just moving on. Okay. And so as you continue to read these articles, what you're going to find is that their attitude is, we don't care what the world thinks, and we don't care what the world says, and we don't care how much they object. We are going to continue. The little horn is doing its thing. And so, yep, we've got a ground invasion in southern Lebanon, and it is going to get brutal. That's what we're looking at, folks. And so, again, are we shocked? Is anybody surprised? Should any of you be surprised? No. Why not? Because we warned you about it, and you were watching this slow walk up with the war of words. This is why we sit at the 10,000-foot view, and we pay attention to the repeated statements, the repeated words, right? The phrases they use, right? Because what are they doing? They're telegraphing. And we watch the patterns. We do that from the 10,000-foot view through the lens of the scripture so we can understand what's really happening, not what they want you to think is happening. And remember who they really want to fight with. Okay? So this is what it's really all about. It's not really about each other. They're jockeying for position, but they really are opposed to the king, right? So we have to always remember that. And switching gears to the United States, boy, oh boy, what a time period that we're watching right now unfold in the United States. And we've got serious damage that has been done in the United States. And before we go there, I want to just bring up one story. Let me find it. Oh, yes, here it is. And this was really, really hard to read. Unfortunately, the United States is not the only place that is suffering from serious rainfall. And so I'm going to go ahead real quick. Here, this is Nepal, and floods caused by extreme rainfall since Thursday, September 26, have claimed more than 130 lives in Nepal. And apparently, according to this report, it's up to 260. So this is not just local to the United States or the Southeast United States. So these kinds of things are going on throughout the earth. Okay, so it is throughout the earth. It's not just in the United States. I just want to make that point because it's really easy to only focus on where you are and not see that it is all over the earth, folks. These folks weren't planning on walking through water today like this, but here they are. Here they are. And so this is reality we're all dealing with. And I'm grateful if you are in a safe place tonight. If you are in a place where you are not under any threat, we're very happy to hear that. I can tell you that right now, because a lot of people are in harm's way. And as a matter of fact, and unless you've been under a rock, you know this. Here, pop this back on the screen. Hurricane Helene was wreaked havoc across Asheville, North Carolina. National Guard deployed. 119 people were rescued. This got bad quick. And Asheville, North Carolina, by the way, is one of the 40 cities that I had to go to. So that's kind of interesting. As the death toll continues to rise across the southern states, first aid and assistance to those suffering from Hurricane Helene are rolling in across the country. And as of Sunday morning, the North Carolina National Guard activated more than 500 soldiers and airmen and more than 200 vehicles and aircraft, including hoists and emergency aviation assets, as well as high water response vehicles. Now, I was sitting at the table the other day, and I made kind of a joke about, you guys all remember that joke about two boats in a helicopter? Remember that? Remember that joke? And then today I read about a family that was stuck on top of a mountain, and the only way that they were going to get down was by helicopter. And they were running out of water. They were out of water and running out of food. That was a horrible thing to read. And I remember thinking, wow, we joke about these things. We laugh about these things, but it's not funny. And it's very serious. We've all kind of saw it coming from a long way off, and then it's easy to think of it dismissively. But now it's here. And now it's doing some serious damage to people's lives. And so this is reality. By the way, I'm pretty sure all of you already know. I didn't hit this, but I suppose I should let you know that, in case you didn't, that the Israeli military did kill the leader of Hezbollah already. So I mean, that's a reason why there's a lot of that anger. I think that story kind of popped into a different spot. And then, Turkey's not happy about this. So Turkey's now threatening to jump into this fray, by the way, guys, just so you know. So, I mean, there's a lot going on over there. I mean, we could have spent all day just covering this stuff. All right. Just talking about how they're really, really getting upset and want to bring it into full on. But I really think that we have to switch gears and understand just what's really happening right here at home. As a matter of fact, in Cook County, I'm going to go back to the hurricane here in a minute, but look at the side effects of some of these things, guys. Sometimes we only see what which again in our area, but this is Cook County. And again, the flooding is happening. A Newport evacuations order after false alarm or catastrophic dam failure. Basically evacuation was as of September 27th. And they were saying that there was going to be a dam failure. Thankfully, I don't think that actually happened. But I do think there was a tremendous amount of damage still from the flooding. So even though I think, we got to be careful with some of these reports where people are getting a little panicky. And this is one of the things that we're going to have to try to be careful. We just have to be really careful with that, because that is going to be the norm. We're going to see more and more manipulation of stories and things that are going to keep happening. So, be sober and be vigilant out there, my friends. And that Hurricane Helene, I mean, that was a serious hurricane. It produced unsurvivable storm surge, according to this report, with over 1 million power outages. So Hurricane Helene has made landfall in Florida and, of course, did horrific damage. We're going to continue to be covering some of that. And I know all of you know that, but what you may not be aware of is just how devastating some of these things were. The hurricane basically left a trail of devastation across the South. So if you were able to get through it, that doesn't mean it won't still affect you, because that's going to affect business, all forms of commerce, and 4.4 million without power. And I mean, that's a serious issue. That's a lot of people. So the hurricane left 4.4 million without power and at least 30 dead across 4 states as it battered Georgia and moved into the Carolinas early on Friday. And so it just continued. There's more stories that came out that just indicated just how devastating this whole thing was. And, again, I mentioned Asheville, and it's devastated. Apocalyptic is what it's called. I didn't write that headline, guys. I did go there with a jar of brimstone, but I didn't write that headline. So the judgments are coming in as prophesied. It is a dangerous time. And by the way, this flooding affects more than just homes and things like that. It affects vehicles, right? So one of the things that we discovered as we were tackling the challenge of backup power and having surplus power for any situation, we found out that these batteries couldn't be trusted, that if they got wet, they'd explode. Now, what a great thing to put in somebody's house. Isn't that a great idea? Put it right on your wall. Ooh, there's your power wall. Yeah. And if that thing gets wet, it just starts igniting, and next thing you know, you can't put it out. Fire trucks have emptied their whole tanks and couldn't put the fires out. They typically have to put a car, if it goes on fire, in a hole and just leave it there and just douse it and let it sit there, because otherwise it'll keep reigniting. This is very dangerous stuff, folks. So what do you think started happening just to add, insult to injury? Yep, flooded electric cars and scooters bursting into flames right after Hurricane Helene. So does that feel like a little bit of a setup, since there are other technologies that we located, and if I can find them, other people could find them, right, that are green and are not affected and actually work better than this technology? So this is a mystery to me. Hurricane Helene swamped Tampa with over 6 feet of storm surge, flooding entire neighborhoods. Tampa's mayor suspects floodwater sparked at least one electric vehicle fire that destroyed a home. See? So imagine if that were your backup system. It's attached to your home. At least with a car, you have a chance it's not going to be parked in the garage. Hurricane Helene's floodwaters kept firefighters from reaching some houses Friday night, or fires Thursday night, and the salty storm surge may have been the cause of at least one destructive blaze. And so, again, ooh, look at that. Yikes. That's crazy. And that, unfortunately, is the way they end up, too. I mean, it doesn't stop. It just burns and burns and burns. So don't get any of that on you. Didn't that remind you of like Sodom and Gomorrah? Like just burned to a crisp, nothing left. I wonder if that isn't just a message in and of itself, right? Something that we should be aware of. And it ain't over. That's the really bad part is there's more storms lined up getting ready to come into the Gulf. Tropical storm could form in Gulf Mexico next week. Development odds increasing. Now they're really talking about this just days after Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida. The National Hurricane Center is warning residents on the Gulf Coast to monitor another tropical storm. A low-pressure system is expected to develop over the western Caribbean Sea in the next couple of days. Environmental conditions are forecast to support gradual development, and a tropical depression of tropical storm could form by the middle of next week. Right at the beginning of Sukkot. Look at that. They're expecting yet another storm to come in. And so somebody said that there were several of them. And I do expect that, yes, there are probably quite a few people that are missing or unaccounted for in this process, my friends, because after all, that's how they roll. Did you know that North Carolina was impacted by this? And many people didn't know that. North Carolina, Tropical Storm Helene, is catastrophic for western North Carolina mountains. And this is not going to go back to normal anytime soon. This is over. Life won't soon be the same for communities in North Carolina's mountains after Tropical Storm Helene. A whole lot of people thought they would be okay there in the North Carolina mountains. And that did not turn out very well. Heartbreak in the hills. The French Broad and Swananoa rivers swept through Asheville's well-known Bitmore Village and River Arch District. And one of the more alarming alerts in the same time in the state, the National Weather Service issued an all-caps warning Friday morning. And, of course, they thought that the dam was going to fail. I don't think, again, it actually failed, but there was that warning. And so this is what it looked like. And now they're saying another storm is forming behind that. Wow. Okay. That is formidable. That's formidable, folks. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. Look at this in Asheville. I mean, this really caught me because, of course, when I saw the name of the town, I thought, oh my goodness, Asheville cut off from the world. Damages estimated at $100 billion in the South. And by the way, folks, if you're concerned whether the insurance companies actually have that, you have a valid concern. Asheville and other parts of western North Carolina were cut off from the world on Saturday with no roads open in to or out of the most populous city in the region. Electricity and cell towers limited or inoperable. Fatalities from the storm Helene in the south were more than 5 dozen, and Buncombe County members where Asheville is county seat and were not included due to the troubling reaching next of kin. It's that bad. They don't even want to tell you how many people died because they want to make sure they reach the next of kin first. Wow. That's where we are, folks. We warned you it was coming. Now, you say, when did you warn us it was coming? If you go back to the spring, you'll find that we were talking about they're dropping this hint. Remember, guys, back in the spring, we kept noticing that they were dropping this hint about how this was going to be the worst hurricane season, or it was going to be really bad. Remember that? Remember we kept getting, and then we saw one very early in the season, and we're like, wow, that was a really early in the season hurricane, right? And sure enough, and there's more coming. They're not done. Hurricane season technically goes all the way through November on their calendar, so just understand that. And it's going to continue to cause issues all over. It's not just the hurricanes, too. It's this kind of stuff. Just coincidentally happening. Verizon outages were causing thousands to lose service nationwide just today. And Verizon users nationwide have lost access to phone service Monday in an apparent outage. Great time to not be able to communicate, right? Thousands are reporting being made to down detectors starting around 9 a.m. on September 30th. That's today. Regarding a large Verizon service outage, the number of outages hit its peak around 11 a.m. on a Monday. You can't make this up, folks. You know how many people are trying to scramble? Do you have any idea how many people are trying to scramble right now, calling whoever they can? I got phone calls. All of a sudden, we had people leave Remnant House. Well, their places got taken quick. People are calling. They're like, hey, we need to do something different. Sudden wake up, awakening has occurred. Okay. And this is reality. And I think it's a great thing. I'm so happy to see people awakening, but you know how many people are trying to use phones just to make arrangements to get their cars out, to get like emergency stuff? And then your whole system goes down. There's no such thing as coincidences. So, and so I'm thankful that for those of you that didn't, but the outage definitely affected a lot of people. I wouldn't be surprised to find out the outage was sort of more concentrated in the Southeast, right? I wouldn't be shocked. How many of our friends and brethren are saying they don't even have good phone service? They can't get, can't make good phone connections and so forth. Can't watch broadcasts because they can't communicate. Starting to come. Speaking of things that are going to get disrupted, I warned you. I told you last week that this was coming. That's the first I saw of it. So I just told you as soon as I saw it. And the port strike would leave Walmart, IKEA, Home Depot with few import options, union warns. Remember I told you guys that October 1st, there's a strike date looming. That's tomorrow. So Walmart, Home Depot, IKEA, Samsung, LG Electronics, and major automakers, auto suppliers are among top companies importing products onto the East Coast ports where ILA union members have vowed to strike as soon as October 1st. Some logistics experts say that importers will pursue options to divert trade to other ports, but ILA union reps tell CNBC solidarity with fellow Canadian and West Coast port union members will thwart any diverted vessels. So you're not going to go to a different port and get around them. Hurricane Helene's impact on the Southeast is already complicating efforts to divert cargo, and there's approximately $34.3 billion in trade currently en route to East Coast and Gulf ports. So we warned about this, and sure enough, here we are. Here we are, folks. And it's coming to pass exactly, as we expected. It would be 1,000 cuts. Remember, it wouldn't be one thing. It would be a little, little this and a little that. And so that you don't notice, because if it's one big event, people don't move. Remember the analogy of boiling a frog, right? Bet you Gerald's got an article about boiling a frog. And you don't notice. The frog doesn't notice, and it won't jump out of the pot. If you had instant hot water, the frog jumps out of the pot. But if you slowly turn up the heat, frog doesn't move, boils to death. Okay? So that's what I see is it's a death of 1,000 cuts. And those of you that are wise, that are, picking it up and not trusting them, well, you're smart. And look what's happening out there, folks. Okay. And yes, I do think NAFTA had an impact on that. Now, attention shoppers, brace for empty shelves. So if you think it's just going to affect one, it's going to affect a lot of things. Rising prices if port workers strike. What? Yeah, this will be the new excuse for inflation. The inflation is happening because the dollar is dropping like a rock, but they'll say it's because of the port. See that? Discretionary items like luxury and recreational goods will be most affected, according to an industry expert. Oh, I think it's going to affect a lot more than luxury items, unless you consider, we import a lot of things. So dock workers along the eastern Gulf coasts have pledged to strike unless a new contract is reached by October, prompting experts to warn that higher prices and empty shelves could await consumers. Okay? And this isn't even being talked about. In fact, some experts say prices could rise before year's end, impacting goods during the critical holiday season. When I got that word, pray that your flight be not in winter, it was a warning. And so the International Longshoremen's Association is negotiating, and let's hope they get it done. But I still think the fact that they put this into the psyche, it ain't going to matter. They'll think of a different reason. So this is them saying to you, plan on this. That's how I see that. Plan on empty shelves. We don't know what's going to be missing, but there's going to be some things. And frankly, folks, the more you pay attention to what they're putting into some of these things, you may not want them. So there's that. And so U.S. Shoppers, of course, are stocking up. Is that the same? Oh, no, it's a different article. How about that? There's two articles saying basically the same thing, that the U.S. shoppers are starting to stock up on essentials as poor strikes pressures are going to make the prices go up. It's a different article, but saying the same basic things from Fox News. Fox, F-O-X, Fox. Oh, my goodness. A bag of Doritos is $6.50, and it has parasites in it. Wow. Get your parasites. Unreal. And this is the future right here. And, they had a new president, and he thought he was going to come in, a populist president, thought he was going to come in and just take care of things, right? Milei, remember that in Argentina? Remember that, guys? They elected him in, and they thought, man, this guy's going to come in, and everything's going to be great. Argentina's poverty rate spikes in first 6 months of President Milei's shock therapy. It can get worse before it gets better. Sometimes these guys have plans, and they're a little off, and the people suffer. Argentina's poverty rate jumped from almost 42% to 53% during the first 6 months of Milei's presidency, a statistics agency reported Thursday, a steep rise reflecting the pain of the country's most intense austerity program in recent memory. The government's finding that Argentina's half-year poverty rate in 2024 had surged to its highest levels since 2003, when the country was reeling from a catastrophic foreign debt default and currency devaluation. Okay, well, they're still going through a devaluation because look at this. Argentina's inflation is now running at more than 230% annually. That means prices are doubling, more than doubling twice per year. Think that through. Imagine the price of things that you normally buy doubling and then again, doubling again before a year's even passed. So this is the reality. And part of what's coming in, and I warn you now, is one of the reasons why you're seeing grandpas, wise men, people with intelligence, they're getting out. They're putting their retirements in other places because where your treasure is, there your heart is, right? So they don't want to be stuck in the Babylonian system. They don't want their heart there. Hello? Because then you'll get snared. And look what's coming for their system. Look what's coming. You think it's expensive now. Putin confirms the BRICS development independent payment system. Remember, they said this was, we caught the rumor. It's going to be $55 for one BRICS unit, 55 to 1. So if you think prices are already going to be going by, they may be getting you used to the idea. So when this hits, it won't quite hit you so hard. Putin confirms BRICS is building an independent payment system. Huge, folks. Potentially backed by gold, aimed at reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar and reshaping global financial dynamics. At the Russian Energy Week Forum in Moscow, President Vladimir Putin announced that BRICS nations are actively working on creating their own payment and settlement system. This initiative is aimed at reducing dependence on Western financial structures like SWIFT, from which Russia has been disconnected due to sanctions imposed in response to the Ukraine conflict. So, they use their system as a pet. They penalize, and they do that to you too, don't they? If you don't do what they want, they penalize you, right? And so the independent payment system is probably going to be some type of blockchain. That's a great question. But I do think that it doesn't matter what it is. The fact is that if people can onboard, if they can open an account like you can with a crypto account, like if you can open an account with that, the Western nations are going to bleed not only people, individuals, they're going to bleed businesses, they're going to bleed states, they're going to bleed local governments. They're going to be putting their money there. So, I mean, this is huge, huge development because, again, it's asset backed versus backed by thin air, backed by imagination, backed by basketball players. And I don't know, Hollywood or something. I don't know. how do they sprinkle the pixie dust on the U.S. dollars anyway, right? They got to pick some. They got to put them on there somehow. By the way, folks, just so you know, there's no secrecy, and it's dying quickly. Telegram is to provide more user data than governments after the CEO's arrest. So they one by one started arresting these people and said, "Hey, you're going to tell us the secret." So Telegram on Monday made significant changes to its privacy terms, and the app will now share information such as users' IP addresses and phone numbers with judicial authorities in cases of potential criminal conduct. The changes come after Telegram CEO Pavel Durov's arrest in France last month. Now, there's some parts of that you might consider to be good, but ultimately what it's boiling down to is there's going to be no privacy anywhere. So, I mean, that's going to be something that you all have to decide whether you want to make that trade or not, right? We all have to make that decision. And before I get into this next story, let's hit this one first. There's thousands of toxin. This is a kind of a bit of a thing that we just now need to really, really double down on. This is another area that we've taken for granted, isn't it? So we let these people make these decisions. We didn't think much about it because we were too busy. But now thousands of toxins are found in humans from food packaging, according to a study that just came out. More than 3,600 chemicals approved for food contact in packaging, kitchen utensils, or food processing equipment have been detected in humans. A new peer-reviewed study finds, adding to the list of largely unregulated toxic substances the risk of exposure to. This chemical has been detected in human blood, hair, breast milk. Among them are compounds known to be highly toxic, such as PFAS, which is the forever version of chemicals. These are next to impossible for the body to eliminate. So again, we have all been contaminated by this world's compromises, and I am so thankful that people are waking up to this because new solutions are emerging. And so when they go, well, you can't buy our stuff, we're gonna go, we don't want your stuff. We will not send you no apples. We will say, we don't want your apples. Your apples are gross. And they'll say, but you cannot buy in our store. And we'll say, we don't want your store. Okay? You don't have to be with those that are trying to poison you. All right? And this next story is really disturbing. I'm very glad for the result, sort of. But I'm not really thrilled with the fact that we even have to have stories like this. So once again, folks, we see another absolutely ridiculous situation here where a youth pastor is sentenced. Thankfully, he's appropriate sentencing. So hopefully this is a deterrent to other not very smart people. Youth pastor sentenced to 50 years in prison for impregnating a 13-year-old girl. A former youth pastor has been sentenced to 50 years in prison without possibility of parole for impregnating a 13-year-old girl. The district attorney office in Ellis County, Texas, announced last week that Marvin Scales, 53, of Waxahachie, was sentenced to half a century behind bars after pleading guilty to 2 counts of sexual abuse of a young child, 1 count of aggravated sexual assault of a child, and 1 count of sexual assault of a child. The statement published by the DA's office said Scales first drew suspicion from police after a local hospital reported that he was overly involved in the delivery process of a 14-year-old girl who went into labor in 2023. That is just beyond words. I don't even know quite what to say. And so, again, I think it's appropriate, the sentencing that he received. probably pled to not be killed. It would be my guess. Why else would someone plead to something like that, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. But unfortunately, once again, we've got another churchianity pastor that decided that was acceptable. If that's the doctrine, then that's the results. Speaking of which, the command, I mean, it doesn't get any better. We've been watching this catastrophic, epic failure for several decades now. Group demands investigation of Morningstar Ministries in wake of sexual abuse allegations. And there's nothing that we as the Remnant have shared with you that these folks could not have shared. They just have chosen not to. A group of more than 100 former members and people affiliated with Morningstar Ministries in South Carolina have signed a petition calling for an investigation of allegations that leaders in the ministry, founded by Rick Joyner, enabled the sexual abuse of multiple minors. This is why those who were called into or accused of sexual abuse would happen to go to this particular ministry to be reinstated. We, the undersigned, publicly and emphatically stand in solidarity in support of the victims of sexual abuse at Morningstar. Uh-oh, dun, dun, dun. These things are coming out, okay? And so this is something that has unfortunately become all too common, and I do hope that the light continues to shine. There should be zero skeletons in your closet like that. And how many know that has been devastating to camps, devastating to groups all across the earth? And so in here in the United States, I've heard of several camps that were destroyed because people couldn't stay in their own bed. This is a dangerous thing. Reality is that, we're living in a lawless time. And the lawlessness has gotten to epic levels. So be sober, be vigilant out there, watch your children, keep them safe, keep them close, because we are in perilous days. Speaking of perilous days, if you are in Arizona, you might have noticed that it's been pretty warm. As a matter of fact, they're saying this is the hottest September ever recorded in Phoenix. And of course, we're not in Phoenix. We're a ways away from that. But we do have slightly warmer fall temperatures, which is really nice for Sukkot. The Phoenix area recorded a high temperature. We're nowhere near that, of 117 degrees. And we're going to be closer to when they're at 117, we're at 95. That is by far the latest ever 117 degree temperature recorded during a calendar year. It smashed the previous daily high of 108 that was set in 1992. Wow, that's stood for a long time. And of course, Phoenix was one of the cities that I had to go to. I don't want to be anywhere near Phoenix. Okay, Phoenix got some issues. Okay, I'm just letting you know, Phoenix ain't exactly, wouldn't be my first choice. Let's just put it like that. It would be, I'd have to be talked into that. I'd have to be talked into that one. And so again, there's a lot going on. Oh, there was another story that was very sad. Let's see if I can find it, and we'll finish up with this. Oh, here it is. And this was also in Arizona. And unfortunately, an Arizona college student was stabbed twice in a random classroom attack. So remember, guys, we've been talking about how these demonic attacks were increasing. We were seeing more like outbursts of demonic activity. And I think you deal with or interact with the demonic more than you may realize, folks. They may have made you comfortable or normalized interaction with them. Many people that some of you people are arguing on social media with people that have demons. Just saying. And how do we know? Well, they do some pretty wild stuff. Look at this. Arizona college student stabbed twice in random classroom attack. Another ASU student may have saved the victim's life after holding back the alleged attacker from stabbing her a third time. So thankfully, someone jumped in. The story is behind the paywall, but allegedly stabbed her peer twice in a classroom in Glendale. So sadly, this happened right here in Arizona. Now, it happened up in the cities, but nevertheless, still in Arizona. So dangerous everywhere, folks. And there's demonic forces that are manifesting in all kinds of places. And so just understand that and be sober and vigilant out there, because your adversary knows he has but a short time. You know that? And he knows that he can't defeat the remnant that are rising right now. And so this is going to become a very dangerous time period. And remember what the scriptures warned us about. Messiah told us that brother would rise up against brother, and the enemies of a man would be the members of his own household. So this is a really good time to be among with your brethren. And you say, who are my brothers, my sister, and my mother? Well, Messiah answers that question. They who hear the word of the Most High and do it. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast has been an encouragement to you and a good update. And I'm thankful for every one of you who share it and encourage our brothers and sisters to look up, for our redemption draws nigh. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That's our report for tonight. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.